The Atlantic was angry that night. Elias Riverstone stood at the top of Blackthorn Lighthouse, one hand gripping the cold iron rail, the other holding a lantern that swayed like a dying star. Rain lashed his face, but he didn't blink. He had stopped feeling pain a long time ago, somewhere between Fallujah and the night his squad never came home. Below, the sea roared and threw itself against the rocks, like it wanted to tear the world apart. That was when he saw it, a tiny sailboat, half swallowed by a wave, its mast snapped like a matchstick. He ran, boots slipping on wet stone. He reached the shore just as the boat smashed against the cliffs. A body floated among the wreckage, pale, motionless, long dark hair fanning out like ink in water. Elias Dovain. The cold hit like a bullet. He fought the undertow, grabbed her waist, and pulled her to the sand. She wasn't breathing. He pressed his mouth to hers, gave her his air, his life, whatever was left of it. 1, 2, 3 compressions, again. She coughed. Seawater spilled from her lips. Her eyes, violet, impossible, terrified, opened and looked straight into his. She tried to speak. No sound came. He carried her up the 127 steps to the lighthouse, wrapped her in his only dry blanket, and lit the old potbelly stove. She shivered so hard he thought she'd break. On the table he wrote with a finger in the dust, "My name is Elias, you're safe." She stared at the words, then at him. Tears filled her eyes. She touched her ears and shook her head. She was deaf. She took the charcoal from the stove and wrote on the wooden floor in beautiful, looping letters, "Aurora Valentine, thank you for saving me. I have nothing left to lose." He read it and felt something crack inside his chest. Something he thought had died years ago. That night the storm kept screaming outside. But inside the lighthouse, 2 broken people sat by the fire and didn't speak. They didn't need to. The silence between them was the first gentle thing either had felt in years. Days turned into weeks. The Coast Guard never found Aurora's family. Her boat had drifted hundreds of miles. She had no ID, no phone, no one looking for her. She stayed. Elias gave her his grandmother Celeste's old room at the top of the lighthouse. Aurora filled it with sketches, waves, gulls, Elias's scarred hands holding coffee, his eyes when he thought no one was watching. She played the piano that hadn't been touched since Celeste died. The grand piano sat in the keeper's cottage like a ghost. Aurora's fingers remembered what her ears had forgotten. She played Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata from muscle memory, eyes closed, tears sliding down her cheeks. Elias stood in the doorway and felt the notes in his bones, even though she couldn't hear them. The music was inside her, and now it was inside him too. One night he found her on the balcony, staring at the black ocean. He wrote on the chalkboard they now carried everywhere, "Why were you sailing alone?" She hesitated, then wrote, "I was running. My fiancé left when I lost my hearing, said I was no longer whole. I wanted the sea to take what was left." Elias's hand shook as he wrote, "You are the most whole person I've ever met." She cried then, soundlessly. He pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face in his chest. He smelled like salt and pine and safety. They began to build a language. He learned sign language from old library books. She taught him how to feel music through vibration, pressing her hand to his throat when he spoke, placing his palm on the piano so he could feel the chords. At night they lay on the cottage roof watching stars. She traced constellations on his skin with her fingertip. He spelled words against her wrist. Fireumylight. One evening, the northern lights appeared, green and purple fire dancing over the sea. Aurora had never seen them. She stood on the gallery deck, mouth open in wonder. Elias came behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. She turned in his arms, touched his face, and for the first time she signed without fear. "I love you," he answered aloud, slowly, so she could read his lips in the aurora's glow. "I have been waiting my whole life to love someone like this." Then he kissed her like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. Winter came hard. Snow sealed them inside the lighthouse like a snow globe. One morning Elias found Aurora in the attic, holding a yellowed envelope addressed to him and his grandmother, Celeste's handwriting. He had never seen it before. With shaking hands he opened it. "My dearest Elias, if you are reading this, I am gone, and someone very special has come into your life. Years ago, a little girl with violet eyes came to my concert in Boston. She was deaf even then, but she felt my music through the floorboards. She gave me a drawing of a lighthouse with the words, 'One day I will find the light.' I kept that drawing. It's in this envelope. I knew she would come back when you both needed healing most. Love her fiercely, my boy. She is the melody you were born to protect. Inside was the drawing, a child's crayon picture of Blackthorn Lighthouse, signed in wobbly letters, Rory Valentine, age 8. Aurora stared at the paper, tears streaming. She remembered Celeste, remembered feeling the piano vibrate under her bare feet, remembered promising the kind old lady she would find the lighthouse one day. Fate had kept its promise in the cruelest, kindest way. That night they made love for the first time. Slow, reverent like a prayer. He kissed every scar on her body. She traced every wound on his. They spoke without words, only breath and heartbeat and the language only survivors know. Afterward, she fell asleep on his chest. He stayed awake, watching the lamp rotate, casting its beam across the dark sea, guiding ships that would never know the miracle that had happened inside its walls. Aurora's hearing never returned, but she composed again. A symphony called The Silence That Sang. Critics called it revolutionary. She performed it barefoot on stage, eyes closed, while Elias sat in the front row feeling every note in his soul. They married on the lighthouse gallery at sunrise, just the two of them and the gulls. She wore Celeste's wedding dress. He wore his dress blues for the first and last time since the war. She signed her vows. He spoke his aloud so she could feel the vibration against her lips. When he kissed her, years passed. They had a daughter with her mother's violet eyes and her father's quiet strength. They named her Celeste. One December night, 30 years later, Elias, now gray, still handsome, still strong, climbed the 127 steps one last time. His heart was failing. Aurora, white-haired but still breathtaking, followed him. At the top, under the great lens, he took her hand. "I'm tired, Rory," he signed. "I know, my love," she answered, tears shining. "Will you play for me? One last time?" She sat at the small piano they had carried up years ago. She played their song, the one she wrote the first month she lived in the lighthouse. He sat beside her, hand on the wood, feeling the music the way she always had. When the final note faded, he leaned over and kissed her softly. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for finding me." Then Elias Riverstone closed his eyes, smiled, and followed the light home. Aurora stayed until dawn, when the sun rose over the sea, painting everything gold. She stood on the gallery and signed to the sky, "Wait for me, my heart. I will find the light again." And the great beam of Blackthorn Lighthouse kept turning, carrying their love across the waves, guiding lost souls the way they once guided each other. Because some lights never go out. They just wait on the other side. The end. I hope this story touched your heart the way you asked. If you want any changes or another story, just say the word.